Hello, okay, in this video we're going to be talking about something I made recently from the Princess Healthy Treats cookbook, and it's a dinner option, so it's like a full meal thing, and it's called Pocahontas Wild Rice Stuffed Squash, and I want to show you a picture of it here. It's kind of a mouthful. Pocahontas Wild Rice Stuffed Squash. And you know, the one thing in this Healthy Treats, I don't know if I mentioned this before, and I did like this and I'm kind of hiding it a little bit. The bottom of every recipe, you'll see there's like little letters there. They tell you things. So this one is gluten-free, refined sugar-free, vegetarian/vegan, and it's also low fat. So this is a really healthy food option that a lot of people could enjoy. So basically what you do is you take squash. Now the picture, it used acorn squash, and that's what I did. But it also mentions in the recipe that you could use butternut squash, I believe. Let me just double check that there. Yeah, you could do acorn. It even says a sugar pie pumpkin squash. So you could use a variety of squashes. So basically what you're going to do, or see me do here, is you're going to make your rice, and then you're going to cook, like kind of pre-cook the squash in the oven. Like you cut it in half, you scoop out the seeds, you roast it in the oven, and then when it comes out, you add this other mixture that you make in the stove and put it all together and then bake it again in the oven. So anyway, here's some videos of me putting it together. So here I'm taking my acorn squash and very carefully trying to cut it in half. And you can see it's a little bit of a tough thing to cut. I use my sharpest knife and kind of have to wiggle it a little bit to get it to go. Finally, it's cut in half. And now I'm scooping out the seeds from the inside. As you can see, I moved it over to do it over my trash can so that the seeds come out easily. Seasoning the acorn squash with pepper and some salt. And once I'm done seasoning these, I'm going to put them in the oven, cut side down, to roast for about 20 minutes. So here I have basically the first half of making the stuff that goes inside the squash. What I have sauteed on the stove was I started with some oil and I added some onion, let it saute for a little bit, then added some celery and let it saute, and then added some apple and letting it saute. And the other pot is I'm making the rice and just kind of checking on that. I'm going to keep letting this cook for a little bit, and then I have to add a few more ingredients. I'm adding some hazelnuts to the dish, along with some dried cranberries, and I have some lemon juice that I need to add to the dish here in a minute and stir it all together. Once that's done, I'll combine it with the rice and then put it into the squash. Okay, so here's everything combined in the pan, and as you can see, my squash is roasted, and I'm getting ready now to fill the stuffing inside of the squash. Once they're all filled, I'm going to bake them in the oven again for an additional 20 to 30 minutes. Out of the oven, and I had a little bit extra stuffing, so what I did is I just put that in a ramekin to cook so that we could have it as extra to eat if we needed it. And there was the squash. It was actually really tasty. You know, I thought, you know, I really appreciated the fruit, like there's dried cranberries in it, and you know, I think there were some hazelnuts, and I was a little nervous about that, but like the textures worked really well together and the flavors worked really well together. Was it like the best squash or vegetarian or vegan type dish I've ever had? No, but it was still really nice. Had some really good flavors to it. And, you know, the squash was pretty good. I think, you know, it's kind of the end of the season for when you can kind of get like acorn squash around here. So I don't think the squash that I particularly got was like the best squash. Like it was, you know, you could kind of tell like it wasn't like as great as it could be, but it still worked really well. So yeah, my husband also liked it too. So yeah, let's get into the rankings and the review. And the first I'm going to rank are the ingredients. So the ingredients, that's a combination of how hard they are to find and cost. So 1 is inexpensive and easy to find. 5 is the opposite of that, expensive, hard to find. I'm actually going to put this in the middle out of 3. Acorn squash, or whatever squash you want to use, can be difficult to find depending on the time of the year. You know, I can almost always find butternut squash, like diced or something, in a store. But like whole squashes that you want to, you know, cut open and roast, and because you know you need that to put the stuff in, that can vary seasonally, at least for where I live. Everybody else might be different, but I think that can be hard to find. And a couple things too. I actually like the rice it wanted me to use was wild rice, and you know, one of the stores I normally go to didn't have it, but luckily I live in a town that has a lot of options, so I went to another store and I found it, but ended up getting an organic version. It was a pricey little bag, honestly, for rice. I think I paid like $8 or $9 for like this little bag of rice, but it, you know, it was pretty, and I, you know, was trying to follow the recipe. And also like things like hazelnuts and stuff like that, and even dried cranberries, that stuff can add up a little bit more than some of your other meals. That's why I'm ranking it there. Difficulty level on a scale of 1 to 5, with, you know, 1 being super easy and 5 being difficult. I think I'm gonna give this a 3 as well, like right in the middle. I think it wasn't hard, but there's a lot of steps. Like first you gotta make the rice. So you gotta let that simmer and make sure that's cooked properly. Then you gotta cut open the squash. You know, cutting produce, you know, you gotta be careful with that. Make sure you have a good sharp knife, you know, maybe watch some videos or things on how to properly cut that stuff. You know, I was kind of heard like sometimes with round things kind of just rocking a little bit helps, and I have seen that sometimes. But yeah, there's that, and then you got to roast it, then you got to saute the stuff and mix it all together. So there's a lot of steps involved. That's why I'm putting it as a 3. I don't think that they were all particularly hard, but again, this ranking is just kind of based on everything, so that's why it's in the middle. And then would I make this again on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being no and 5 being absolutely? I think I'm gonna rate it like, I was torn between a 3.5 and 4, so I guess I'll lean towards a 4. Liked it. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite, but it's definitely one of those things like I can appreciate it. You know, I really enjoyed the flavors. I liked it enough that I can say, yeah, I probably will make this again someday, but depending on the availability of the squash and the time of year, and it's one of those things like, it's probably going to be, yeah, I'll make it again someday, but it's probably not going to be something I make often. It's going to be maybe something that I make like once a year, or maybe even honestly every couple years or something like that. But it was tasty, and I would definitely make this too, I should say, if I had somebody over. I know people have like gluten issues and, you know, things like that, so I would definitely make it for them. So yeah, probably will make it again, but it's not gonna be made often, and I'm getting way sidetracked on this review. So there is the summary, and I'm gonna end my talking now.